在最后，如果有时间，我们会请 Vincent 回答一些观众的问题。为了交流能更加顺畅，接下来我们的讲座大部分时间都会使用英语来进行。Hello and welcome to pipa's 10th anniversary celebration. My name is Alicia Lee, and I will be the host of tonight's event. pipa is a magazine published in America for children learning the Chinese language and culture all around the world. And this year, pipa is celebrating its 10th birthday. Tonight, we are honored to invite Vincent Zhou, a famed and outstanding figure skater, to talk about his skating, learning, and life experiences. Vincent was interviewed by pipa 8 years ago, and today we will have 6 fans of pipa joining us to ask him some questions they have. At the end, if we have time, we'll take a few questions from the audience for Vincent to answer as well. The majority of today's event will be conducted in English for easier communication. 首先有请我们今天的嘉宾 Vincent Zhou. Hi Vincent, it's so great to meet you and thank you so much for being here with us today. Before we start the discussion, would you like to say a few words to our audience?
Hi Alicia and hi everyone who's on the Zoom. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been so long since I last talked to pipa. Last time I was 13 years old. So I was just a boy, just a little kid then. I hadn't really accomplished anything significant then. So it's crazy to think how my journey has progressed over the years, and it's so cool to be coming full circle once again with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Thank you to you too. We often see Vincent's stunning performances on TV and the lights and flowers surrounding him, and we can only imagine the efforts and sacrifices he and his family have made to get to this point. He said during interviews that what we see is at best the tip of the iceberg, so we'd like to go behind the scenes today. The first set of questions comes from Melody and Kelly, and will center around Vincent's figure skating journey. I see Melody is wearing a cute little badge with Vincent's headshot she drew herself today. Vincent, Melody, and Kelly, if you're ready, please take it away.
Hi, Vincent. So when did you know that you'd become an Olympian?
Hi, first of all, you're really cute. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Like when you started skating at 5 years old, did you already know that you'd be an Olympian?
So the first time I watched the Olympics was in 2010. That was when Evan Lysacek won the gold medal. And from then on, my Olympic dream just took off. So, when I first stepped on the ice when I was 5.5 years old, I always wanted to be the fastest on the ice. I always wanted to be the best. But the Olympic dream for me didn't really take off until I watched my childhood idol, Evan Lysacek, lead by example. So from 2010 on, making the Olympics was the biggest, most important dream that I've ever had. So I'm really honored that I was able to turn it into reality.
What was the hardest part of skating? How did you make it work?
There are many difficult parts of skating and many difficult moments, but I think for me, the hardest part is overcoming the mental roadblocks that I encounter when I feel like I can't do something. That's something that everybody encounters every day in their life or every week in their life. Everybody has unique challenges in their life, and for me, the most important thing is making sure that I keep myself motivated by thinking about how hard I've worked, all the time and effort I've put into my career, all the sacrifices I've made for it, my team surrounding me, my parents, my sports psychologists, my coaches, my friends, everybody who's working with me to make sure that I can achieve my dream. That motivates, and of course the Olympic dream above it all, that motivates me to get up and get things done when I don't think I can.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
So when you prepared for the Olympics, how many hours did you skate per week? Also, how did you balance ice skating time, schoolwork, and socializing?
I'm sorry, your background noise is very loud, but just to clarify, was your question about how I balanced skating, school, and my social life?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So balancing skating and school is always a struggle growing up. When I was 9 years old, my mom and I moved away from home, a couple hundred miles away from home, so that I could train in a better place for my skating career. But in order to make that move, I had to sacrifice my regular school life in the Bay Area in California, which is one of the most competitive school districts, one of the most competitive places I would say, in the whole world, honestly. Um, and that was a step that nobody was willing to take, but my mom and I kind of took a leap of faith and sacrificed that for my skating career. But even though we made that sacrifice for my skating, I was always expected to perform highly in academics. And if I didn't perform well in school, then I wasn't allowed to skate. Because the skating career, just like other sports like gymnastics, where the physical demands are extremely high and the human body can only take so much, and part of it's highly dependent on puberty and how your body develops through your younger years. Skaters' bodies typically don't last past their early 20s. So I couldn't rely on skating to be a lifelong career or a money-making vehicle for me in the future. So I always had to ensure that my academics were up to par with the standard that my parents grew up in, going to Tsinghua University, and that my parents raised me and my sister in, which was a very high Eastern standard. So I made lots of sacrifices in order to pursue my skating, but I also made lots of sacrifices to do well in school. I went out of my way to take extra classes or do college prep, SAT prep, things like that. Took many hours outside of my skating life and commuted all over the place to make it happen. So yeah, that's how the balance between skating happened. As for my social life, I would say my social life was very stunted. When dedicating 24 hours a day to trying to be the best in both worlds, in skating and school, I didn't have much time for other things. I think my social development was pretty behind. What really forced me out of my shell eventually was being a public figure. After I started to achieve success in skating, you're putting to the spotlight, no matter whether I like it or not. So being forced to appear on TV and being interviewed all the time and all that, you kind of have to get used to it. So now, even though I still am definitely very introverted and I get pretty bad social anxiety, I think that I'm doing much better with coming out of my shell, being more confident in talking to anyone, and knowing how to present myself and how to act and how to carry myself in a social situation. And there's no secret formula. I think that's most important for everyone listening, is that there's no secret formula for being able to balance leading school and a social life. It comes down to how you view your own passions and hobbies and interests, and weigh that with what is practical for you to succeed in life, after your sports career or after school, and consult with your parents and make appropriate decisions accordingly.
Thank you, Vincent, Melody, and Kelly. We've heard, and he's also said, that academics have always been a priority, and he graduated from high school at 16 and earned the Presidential Award Award for Educational Excellence. He's committed to returning to school full-time in the fall at Brown University. And next, Yuming would like to get Vincent's perspective on academics.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Vincent. It's a pleasure to meet you. Let's get
You-
started with the first question. My first question. What was your favorite subject in middle and high school? Why did you choose economics as your major in college? And how do you plan on using it for your future career?
Great question, and it's nice to meet you too. In middle school, my favorite subject was probably my math courses. From a very young age, I was very advanced in math. I remember when I was in second grade, my mom had me working on sixth grade Singapore math workbooks. When I switched to online school, I skipped 3 grades in math and 1 grade in everything else. So I honestly think that math was pretty easy for me back then. I was definitely ahead of the curve. In high school, I would say my favorite subject looking back might have been my science courses, biology, chemistry, and physics. So the UC colleges, University of California colleges, have a special requirement where they don't accept the courses that my online school offered for science. So I had to commute long hours in heavy LA traffic in order to take classes at a physical school for my science courses so that I could have hands-on labs, because they didn't accept UC requirements don't accept labs that are virtually done or done at home. But that experience at a regular school was actually, I think it helped me learn better, gave me something fresh, something different, a new perspective on school and on studying that I couldn't get in my online courses. So I enjoyed that very much. Once I return to Brown this fall, I will be concentrating in economics in the business track. I think that's a very practical concentration for me. By the way, at Brown, it's called concentrations, not majors. So that's why I'm saying that. So my parents are software engineers, and they encouraged me to study CS, as that's a very hot field right now. With AI and all that stuff on the rise right now. But after a bad experience with coding in high school, that kind of turned me off CS a little. So I kind of have to look at other practical majors that'll give me opportunities, lots of opportunities right out of college. And so right now I'm looking at for future tracks, I'm kind of looking at entrepreneurship and VC, something finance or business related. And I have a couple of internship opportunities potentially set up. So I'm going to start, reading up super early. I'm hoping to take some CS engineering courses on the side as well, because those are critical areas to have knowledge and experience in if I'm going to go into entrepreneurship and VC after college. So yeah, and also one more thing that I keep hearing is that the 20s are your time to explore. So you don't have to know exactly what you're going to do. And when I hear that, I think that it's definitely true, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean that you can just kind of do whatever and not care about your future when you make choices in your 20s. So I'm definitely committing to a certain path right now, but I'm giving myself some wiggle room with electives and maybe 4th or 5th courses I take during a semester. So yeah, that's those are my course selections.
Yeah. So on to the second question. During the pandemic, I found it extremely challenging to do remote learning. I became more addicted to games than ever. I know you just started taking online classes starting from a young age. And how do you discipline yourself? How did it compare to in-person learning for you?
That's a great question. So I'm human too, and just like most kids out there, I also struggled with the pull towards video games. especially going to online school when you're sitting in front of a computer screen, you get bored. And since you have the computer right in front of you, you want to play games. I think the key to controlling that doesn't come from your parents setting restrictions on you. It comes from your own desire in the end. It comes from recognizing what's most important in your life. And I think for me, I wish I had recognized the importance of managing my time better sooner. But hindsight's always 2020, and you can't always make perfect decisions in the moment when you don't have knowledge that you will have in the future. So when I think about how I decide to manage my time or commit to things now, how I do it is typically based on how important it is to me. So when I was preparing for the Olympics, every single minute of my life was dedicated to making sure that I could perform the next day as well as possible, because that's what matters when it comes to making the Olympic team and performing at your top when the time comes. Similarly, if you struggle with video game addiction, it's important to recognize what your personal goals are and how you plan to meet them, and what the best way to partition your time every day is towards those things. Try setting a realistic and attainable weekly goal for yourself. For example, by the end of this week, I'm going to progress to being able to do this. The following week, I'm going to spend X amount of hours working on this, and by the end of the week, I'll be able to master it at a certain level. Setting goals for yourself like that and making sure they're realistic and attainable will help you work more efficiently every day, and will give you a measurable metric in order to feel better about the progress you're making and feel better about the time you're committing to making said progress. The better you feel about the time you're committing to it, the less likely you are to want to spend that time on distractions such as games.
Yeah, thank you for your response.
Thank you.
Being an athlete, you're busy with training and are often overwhelmed by fans. How often do you actually hang out with your friends being so busy? And when you walk on campus, do you feel you're different from the other students?
That's another great question. So when I was growing up, I definitely felt like my time with my friends was more limited than normal. I always saw my friends, going out to do this, going out to do that, having interests outside of skating in school. Honestly, for me, because I spent 24 hours a day either at the rink or training for skating or studying or sleeping, I can't say I had many interests outside of what went on in the rink or at home when I was sitting in front of my computer studying or being distracted otherwise. So I think in terms of spending time with my friends and having real world interests, I was definitely limited in that department. Especially leading up to the 2018 and 2022 Olympics, I spent zero time with my friends because I trained 6 days a week, and on my day off, I had to let my body recover and prepare to go into the rink the next day so I could perform at my best the next day. There was no time to go out for dinner with my friends or go watch a movie or go hang out or whatever. Opportunities to do that were exceedingly rare. I could probably count on one or two hands the number of times I got to do that the entire year in 2000 leading up to the Olympics. So and once again, that goes back to my previous question about recognizing what's important to me and recognizing my goals in life. In this case, in the short term, making the Olympic team and performing well at the Olympics. That was the most important thing to me. And so I chose to dedicate all my time to making that happen. And hanging out with friends would not be productive to me making the Olympic team. So those are, like people, like I can tell you about that right now, and you could hear it from your parents or from a mentor or whatever, but in the end it comes down to yourself and being able to make that decision for yourself. So yeah.
Thank you, Yiming and Vincent. As an Olympic athlete, Vincent faces tremendous amounts of pressure to perform, and he describes himself as a fighter, punching back when he gets put into difficult situations. So next up, Caden Jibowen would like to ask some questions about how he deals with challenges and always stays positive.
Hi, Vincent. My name is Caden Chi, or Jibowen, and it's an honor to meet you. First, I wanted to ask about, since I watched your interview with NBC, where you described the mental pressure reaching insane levels during your isolation. What are some strategies that you use to deal with loneliness?
Hi, Caden. Thank you for your question. Sometimes when you're super lonely, the best thing you can do is to immerse yourself in your work. Feeling accomplished at the end of the day, being proud of the effort that you put into something often is more important than social needs you might feel or feeling lonely. Leading up to the 2022 Olympics, because China's COVID restrictions are extremely strict, I had to basically start isolating myself immediately after the US championships for about 3 weeks or so. So for 3 weeks, the only people I were in contact with were my coach, my mom, and my doctor, and also the 2 other skaters in my rink who were going to the Olympics. We stayed in our own bubble. That was extremely lonely. The pressure was insane. And there was just there was zero time or space for anything else. And the way I got through that, like I said, was immersing myself in my work, in my career, in my job, in my aspirations. I think there's no better use of your time than to work towards your dreams. And as long as I was working towards my Olympic dream, I wasn't wasting time or doing anything bad with my life. So I think that's how I mentally coped with it. It was difficult, yes, but yeah, that was how I handled it.
Thank you very much. For my second question, I would like to ask, what are the most important lessons you have learned from skating, and how have those lessons impacted your life in general?
That's a big question. Over the last 15 or 16 years, I have learned so much from skating and from being an elite athlete, and all the challenges that come my way accordingly. And I think one of the most important lessons I've learned is the positive mindset, where no matter whether an experience or situation or something that happened to you, no matter if it's good or bad, there's always something to learn from it. This is called a growth mindset. So I actually learned this from a mentor who helped me out with my college applications. But basically, the concept is that if you have a good experience, then you want to think about what made the experience good, what you did leading up to it that made it successful, how you prepared or what you did to make the result turn out that way, and how can you repeat it so that you learn and grow from the experience. If your experience was bad, you similarly recognize what made that experience bad. Was there an error in preparation? Was there an error that happened in the moment that was out of your control? Were there variables that you didn't account for? Anything like that. So no matter not, I don't even know what I'm saying. No matter whether you have a good or bad experience, there's always something to learn from it. You can always grow from it. So that's probably the most valuable lesson I learned. There are a couple other things, such as techniques to deal with pressure to perform in the moment. One of those one of those techniques is like visualizing myself at home in my rink, because the reason you want to do that is because at home I've trained my programs and done my elements thousands of times, and I've done it successfully under all different circumstances, early in the morning, late at night, when my body's hurting, when my body's sore, when my mind is distracted. It doesn't matter. I've done it successfully before. So I know that I'm prepared. I know that I'm equipped to perform in the moment. So when I actually have to go perform in the moment, even though I'm super nervous, there's lots of pressure, everything's riding on it. As when I visualize myself in my home rink, it helps me relax a little, and it helps remind me that I've done the work and now is the time to just show it off. So that I learned that from my sports psychologist, and that's a great way to deal with pressure in the moment. So that's just one example of the many important lessons and tools that I've accumulated over the years being a skater and elite athlete.
Thank you, Vincent and Caden. So Vincent's often talked about the benefit of having a holistic perspective from living in the American culture with his Chinese heritage. Apparently, he studied Chinese when he was younger and published an article, 我的小天地, in Pipa magazine. I wonder if his parents have also insisted on him reciting Chinese poems as my parents do. So next, Zhang Haohan and Caitlin would like to explore how he's connected with his Chinese identity.
Hi, Vincent. My name is Ethan, and I'll be asking a few questions for you in Chinese, if you don't mind.
Sure, go.
So, 我看过你写的，你给小琵琶发表的文章《我的小天地》。你开始练花环后，还有时间学中文吗？学习中文对你现在有什么帮助？
我小时候上了斯坦福中文学校，上到了7年级，12岁。我和我的妈妈经常北加州和南加州之间开车，每周开个1000多迈，然后我总是周日上好几个小时中文学校，然后上完了我们马上就开好几个小时过去到南加州去，然后我在车里做中文功课，然后学习中文，在车上写中文的作文。我就是在车上写的我的小天地。现在呢，我有很多的粉丝是从中国来的，或者是会说中文的。我每次到中国去比赛，我都能感觉到我不知道这词就是 immense support。所以我小时候学中文对我现在的 career 有很大的帮助。
谢谢。你去过中国哪些地方？在中国时，你最喜欢做什么？
我小时候去过中文去见我的爷爷奶奶、姥姥姥爷去了2周半，然后非常好玩。我们啥都做。我记得我最喜欢的是爬长城。我那天大概爬了10迈，走得特累，但是就是非常开心，非常激动。然后我2017年在北京又比过一次。我那时候都没有比奥运会呢，都就是说不是那么 successful， 但是在中国已经有很多粉丝了。他们在那儿关注非常 strong， 所以我2017年在中国比完了，我对中国的粉丝非常我是怎么说呢？感恩还是热情，我不知道怎么说，但是yeah, very very thankful to my fans after that。然后我最近是2022年2022奥运会冬奥会去北京又去了一次，但是这次是 这只是不是因为 COVID 嘛，是在一个 bubble 里头，所以我没法出去见人，没法出去干事儿，所以我觉得我这次的 experience 是挺 limited。但是我还有在中国最爱干的 activity 是吃饭，我非常喜欢吃中餐。然后我妈妈经常在家给我做中餐，所以我就非常喜欢在中国吃饭。
谢谢你回答我的问题。
Hi, Vincent. My name is Caitlin. I'm also a figure skater and I'm a huge fan. I'm really grateful to get to talk to you today. And my first question is, I'm a huge fan of your 2021 free skate, where you skated to a piece of traditional Chinese music and wore a costume emulating Chinese culture. Can you explain what this program means to your identity as a Chinese American and how that identity kind of plays into your sport?
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. Also, thank you for being a fan and supporting me. I appreciate it. My 2021 free skate was to the soundtrack of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And that was a very special free skate to me because in 2019, when I also skated to it, I won my first world medal after a very difficult season. And that was one of the most important moments of my career was that first world medal. In 2021 to 22 season, the Olympic season, I decided to reuse the program because in Olympic season, you want to choose music, you want to choose a program that's that you're very comfortable with and already suited. It's very suited for you, so that you can have a better chance at developing it and being more comfortable skating it and being able to perform it more authentically from the get-go. So when we were considering music options, we considered a few options, but when the idea of reusing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came up, I instantly just felt so comfortable with it. And when I started skating the program again, it was like slipping into a pair of old favorite shoes. Like it just felt good right away. So yeah, it just felt right for me to skate to. From the time from the time I was young, I always felt a connection to anything that was sort of, that sort of had like a Chinese or Asian influence, whether it be, like graphics or art or clothes or architecture or whatever. I just find myself more drawn to things like that. So, the idea of skating to sort of Chinese or Asian piece just felt to me. Also, because throughout my life, I embodied lots of Eastern standards, such as the rigorous academic upbringing and the standard of excellence in what you do. Like not just do what you love, and I think in the West you see a lot more like do whatever you love, and it's okay if you're not the best at it as long as you love it. But I think the Chinese parent mindset is more like you. It's not always about doing what you love. You have to choose something that's practical, something that's useful, and something that's going to make you successful later in life. And if you choose to spend your time doing something, you have to be successful at it. So, I grew up with an interesting combination of those two cultures. But I definitely always felt connected to my Chinese roots, whether it be through my personal preferences or through expectations, standards, and values imposed upon me by my parents. So I'm extremely grateful to them for allowing me to connect with my heritage in that way. And I'm really grateful to them for expecting excellence from me. And I'm really proud to be able to embody that in the form of my Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon program, which brought me much success and much joy skating too. So yeah, thank you for the great question.
course. And I just have one more. As a Chinese American on Team USA, I was wondering, how do you balance and represent both identities? Have you ever faced conflict between the two?
Well, you know, in figure skating right now, Asians are dominating the sport, at least in singles, because we typically have body types that are really good for a sport like skating, where for singles to jump, to do hard jumps, to rotate really fast in the air and consistently land with a consistent center of mass, you can't be too tall or bulky. And I think generally Asians have smaller frames. We have, like, we don't bulk up as easily, and we tend to be longer and leaner. And I think that's great for skating. In disciplines such as ice dance, where you have to be super tall, and being tall like a dancer looks better. So that's why more like Americans and Europeans dominate that discipline. And I think pairs is mostly dominated by Europeans, with the exception of some really great Chinese pair teams, such as Wenjing Sui and Han Song, who, I mean, I don't know how Han Song does it, because he's shorter than me, he's shorter than his partner, and in pairs you typically have to be like at least 6 feet tall and very upper body heavy, with tons of power and strength and upper body mass in order to be able to toss a girl, like 5 feet above your head. So he's just superhuman. I don't know how he does it, but anyway, back to your question. I mean, I'm super proud to be Chinese American representing Team USA. Team USA has a history of excellence in all sports. We historically were the most dominant country at every single Olympics, and for me to have Chinese heritage and be able to uphold that standard of excellence that's present in Team USA, I think says a lot about my Chinese heritage and the the standards that my parents imposed upon me. And yeah, like I said, I mean, Asians and especially Chinese Americans have dominated men's figure skating for the last couple of years. With Nathan Chen and myself, I think there's so much more talent potential in young Chinese boys who are looking to to be at the top one day. And I would encourage all of them, many of which I'd imagine are on this Zoom presentation right now, to just never stop chasing that dream, never stop wanting to be the best, and just let that Olympic dream, or whatever dream you have, motivate you like it motivated me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent, Caitlin, and Zhang Haohan. So most of our audience today are American-born Chinese who have been inspired by Vincent's success. We're incredibly proud of his achievements and deeply touched by his stories. As a final question, Vincent, what advice would you give to young Chinese Americans?
That's a hard question, because growing up in the sport of skating, so I grew up before Chinese Americans dominated the sport, and I didn't go to regular school, so I didn't exactly have a social circle of other Chinese Americans, other Chinese American boys like myself. I grew up with my friends were basically whoever was at the rink with me, and so I've had lots of social influences, not just from fellow Chinese Americans over the years, but I would say communication between Chinese American children and their parents can sometimes be tough, and there's almost always a clash of values that I've already talked about, between the Western and Eastern values. I would say it's important to find a balance. It's important to learn how to communicate, and it's important to recognize what's important in your life, but also take care of your mental health. So, like I talked about some techniques you can use to, to manage your time and your commitments better earlier. Definitely recognize, what's important to you, and recognize how, or write down and take action in terms of how you want to commit your time to your goals and dreams in the future. But if you find that the expectations or pressures are too overwhelming, don't feel guilty taking time to take care of yourself too. If there's anything I've learned from being an elite athlete, it's that the mental game is almost always more important than the physical game. Because if you're mentally not in it, you're the chemistry between the science between the brain and the body, it's not going to let you perform at your best. I think it works similarly in everything in life. If you're not mentally committed, if you're not mentally prepared, if you're not in the zone, in the moment when you need to perform at a high level, whether it be in sports or whether it be in terms of like your mind functioning well on an exam or something, you have to take care of both your, like, you can't just throw yourself at something for days on end without taking a break, without taking time for yourself. That's why I said it's important to have a balance. And there's no magic ratio. Like I if you ask me to tell you how much, like, a specific percent of your time you should spend hanging out with your friends, a specific percent of your time you should spend like studying or working towards your goal, I can't tell you. It's up to you to figure that out. But just recognize what's important and be willing to make sacrifices and commit to those things.
That makes sense. Thank you. So looks like we have a little bit of time left, and there have been a lot of questions from our audience through the chat over the past 50 minutes. So our chief editor has selected a few for me to raise to you, Vincent. The first one is, what was or is your least favorite element in skating?
That's a great question. I think it's evolved a little through the years. When I was young, there was nothing that I didn't like about skating. I wanted to be amazing at everything. As I got better and I progressed, and my understanding of the sport and of myself, my own body, became more specific and fine-tuned, I found myself drifting towards certain things and away from other things. I would say that my least favorite element now would be any spin position that puts my body at risk. Because here's the thing, I've dislocated my left shoulder 4 times and my right shoulder 3 times. Once you dislocate any joint once, it's at very high risk of coming out again, because the ligaments connecting bone to bone are loosened after the first dislocation, and then it's much easier to contort them out of place. And like, I'm gonna say an interesting analogy, because I think as the Chinese American audience can understand it. So when you're eating zhuqi, sometimes the bone, like, there's 2 ligaments connecting the bone from like here to here, and if you ever play with your food, you can like contort it one way or the other. And after it's really stiff at first, but if you do it once, then it gets much easier to do this. So similarly with my shoulders, after I dislocated it the first time, it just came out much easier. And after that, I couldn't do my difficult spin positions where I needed to like grab my foot behind my head anymore, because now I can't move my arm back past here without it causing discomfort in my shoulder and putting it at risk of future dislocation.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, can we see you in Milano Cortina Olympics?
Maybe. I will be going back to school in the fall, but I'm going to reassess my commitment to skating in the future. So we'll see.
Okay. And Melody has another question for you, if Melody, you'd like to ask him yourself?
What's your favorite skating element?
My favorite skating element would probably be any difficult jump. There's a certain sense of just freedom and just like awe that comes with being able to do a quadruple jump or a triple axel with ease, with flow, with making something that takes a lot of effort look effortless is one of the hardest pursuits in any field. And to be able to do that in my specific field, which is skating, is just a really great feeling.
What's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is definitely a cat. I love cats. I think they're so cute, and they're not high maintenance, unlike dogs, which is why I would probably prefer them over dogs. Although I like dogs too.
I also like cats.
Good. Love to see it.
Do you have a pet?
So when I was young, I had a cat. She was a beautiful Siamese tabby, and her name is Snooky. But when I think through puberty, I started to develop allergies to not just cats, but I think it's like a certain protein in the saliva of animals, or maybe it's like small fine hairs or something. But now I'm allergic to cats and some other furry animals, unfortunately. So unless I take a bunch of allergy medication every single day, I can't be around cats.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our final question from our audience, well, actually, no, not our final question from our audience. Our second to last one. As someone who skipped 2 grades, how has that impacted you?
The reason I skipped grades, there are a couple of reasons I skipped grades. Firstly, because that's where my placement test put me when I entered online school. But also, I recognized that if I finished school a little bit early, I would be able to take the 2017 to 18 year as a gap year to focus on making the 2018 Olympic team. So that worked out really well. I was able to gap that year and dedicate all my time to making the Olympics. And honestly, I don't think I would have if I had to juggle school that year. And then the third reason was at that time when we made the decision, when I was just 9 years old, the thought process was, if just in case skating doesn't work out for me and I end up going back to regular school, when I do go back to regular school, I can jump back a grade and keep learning at the previous level, and that'll make it easier for me because I've kind of already learned the material in the following grade already. And even though I would say the Bay Area schools are definitely way more competitive than any online school you could possibly attend, simply going through that curriculum a year ahead and having a general idea of the material is definitely helpful. So those were my 3 reasons for skipping grades.
Okay, and for our actual final question, what's your biggest dream besides skating?
I would say, if we're talking not just in like career or professional dedications, my biggest dream would probably be to climb any one of the 8,000 meter peaks in the world one day. But that's an undertaking that requires a significant amount of commitment that I don't have right now, and also a lot of money. Permits are very expensive, and gear is very expensive, and traveling is very expensive. So for a more realistic goal, I would just say I hope that one day I can make a career out of doing something that I'm really passionate about and be able to put my heart, body, and soul into it and be successful at it, because I think that's the most fulfilling thing in anybody's life.
Okay, thank you. And I think with that, I'll pass it back to Chen Jing 老师. Oh, Chen 老师.
OK， 好，Thank you Vincent，Thank you 李乐师，今天晚上的这个讲座这个访谈真的是特别特别的棒，我相信小朋友们也学到了很多很多的Vincent 身上的一些精神，然后呢也学到了很多的我们学习的方法，然后训练的方法。陈老师学到一件特别特别重要的事情，就是你们要好好学中文 ，in case you're famous in the future。Right? You got supporters from China. And if you can't understand Chinese, you're in trouble. 是不是？好的，谢谢 Vincent again. 然后那接下来呢是要给大家介绍一下我们